Hi, it's Philip Ross here, and welcome to Ask the Next Police and Crime Commissioner live stream. Thank you for joining. I like to say it's my first live stream. I did one earlier and I realised the sound wasn't very good. So I've decided to record it again, which is quite good for me because I get to answer the same questions twice and perhaps give better answers. Um, the idea is I'm going to do 10 minutes or so, just answering questions that come in from people on police and crime in Hertfordshire and what I would do as the Police and Crime Commissioner if elected in May. And firstly, I would say vote Labour, vote Philip Ross in May. If you want to be safe on the streets, safe at home, and safe online. So the first question I've got coming comes in and it says, "Dear Philip, what makes you qualified to be the Police and Crime Commissioner? Shouldn't you be a police officer or a lawyer?" Um, well, actually, I would say no to those. I don't need to be a police officer and a lawyer to actually do that because this is about community engagement. We don't need more. We've already got 2,000 police officers. We've got loads of lawyers. This is about actually police and the public and actually linking up with our values and what we actually want to happen, which is why what I'm bringing to it is 30 years of expertise in running a business, having worked for people in political experience. I work in cyber security at the moment, so it's a good qualification, but that's not the main ones. The main qualification is bringing those key community values that the police need to reflect what we actually need to do. And those values, the key values I'm bringing, are labour and cooperative values. Actually, the idea of community, collaboration, and accountability. And actually getting the police down there working where we want. And I'd say on top of all of that, key qualification is as a parent myself with a 14-year-old son, exposed to all the problems we've got with antisocial behaviour, county line drugs, and that going on with parents who are exposed to all these problems with cybercrime and people trying to rip them off every day. You know, these are the key qualifications that I'm bringing actually to do that. And what we're offering is a plan for Hertfordshire, the best plan for Hertfordshire, based around the principles which we're calling the civic principles, where C stands for the causes of crime. We're going to be tough on county lines drugs. We're supplying drugs to school-aged children. We're going to be tough on antisocial behaviour that's making people's lives in misery. We're going to be tough on cybercrime and fraud, which is working to defraud people, and tough on domestic abuse, tough on hate crime, and tough on crime across the board. So I hope that answers your question. It's values, bringing those values of cooperation and community led to actually work, to actually do, to make a difference. On the Grange, I've got a message from Margaret. It says there's a huge problem with antisocial behaviour and older people can be scared to go out and are worried about reprisals if antisocial behaviour is reported. I'd say, Margaret, I'm very concerned to actually hear that. And I thought that this was a problem in just where I lived, to start with. Actually, then as I've gone round and campaigned, I've realised, speaking to people across Hertfordshire, thousands of people across Hertfordshire, I'm realising it's not local to me. It's actually everywhere. It's an epidemic of antisocial behaviour. People think it's because we're near the motorway, we're near the train station, or this, that, or another. No, it's actually going all the way across because we've hollowed out over the last 10 years with 20,000 fewer police numbers under the Tories, hollowed out that community element of policing that's allowed actually this sort of the edges of our society to fray, and this is where this antisocial behaviour comes from. And now I know in part this is driven by availability of drugs, the county line drugs, organised crime actually pushing in, creating crime on the streets, pushing kids into gangs, all things we actually need to deal with. And these kids you can be afraid of, I see them as victims too, partly on the streets, actually having gone down the wrong lines. It doesn't make it, the fact that they're making the streets unsafe is a thing, but we need to actually stop them behaving like this. It's not just about locking them up, it's about changing behaviours actually and what we can do. Now on antisocial behaviour, people tell me they get caught in this revolving door. They report it to the police and they go, oh, that's the council says it's the landlord, and the landlord says it's the police. Then they realise they've got to work together and nobody's actually working together, and in the meanwhile people's lives are stressed out and their lives are actually they've got nowhere to turn, and their anxiety and being scared to go out on the streets carries on. So we're going to create a commissioner for antisocial behaviour whose job is to make those groups all work together. Somebody you can go to for help actually, and you can take action on your behalf. And there's some legislation in place called the community trigger, which forces all these agencies to have to work together to sort out the problems. So we're going to put in place that Commissioner for Antisocial Behaviour to actually act and get to the bottom of this. Working out of my office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, no extra costs, actually we take it out of existing budgets, but that's what we can do, a top priority. Right, what else have we got? Next question. Traffic zooming through the estates where I live, not doing 30. What do you think about, we can do about this? And what do I think about the 20 mile an hour proposed zones? Well, I've met with the 20s Plenties group, and I know elections are supposed to be me persuading other people on issues. They've kind of very strong argument around this 20 mile an hour zone stuff, and I've heard some of it before, not just about actually the safety of people when they get hit by cars, but actually how streets people are zooming all through, I live on a school run, so we know what it's actually like, and these are, people who should know better, mounting pavements and zooming down to get their kids to school on time. So I think this 20 mile an hour zone idea is a good one. And we start it though, not just make all of our streets 20 mile an hour, but what we do is we set the default speed limit, which is currently 30. We set the default as 20, and that people have to argue for certain roads to actually go faster. So the main road behind me, for instance, you may argue to say keep that at 30 mile an hour. Maybe might actually be a 40 anyway. And that's where we can go. And whether the police come into this, it's about enforcement. So we can actually enforce the speed limits where people aren't observing. So it's about changes in signage. And we won't be the first county to do this. They've done it, Avon and Somerset, lots of counties all over the country have already done this very successfully. And even in Hertfordshire, Letchworth Town Centre, 20 miles an hour zone, 20 mile an hour zones in neighbourhood streets in Hitchin, Letchworth, I think I said the town centre, but lots of the villages, Wallington and other outside in Hertfordshire. It's in place. It's not doable. It's actually can make our streets safer. So I'm coming around to it. It will take about 4 years to actually roll out. It's a decision though for the county council, not for the police. But when it's there in place, if I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner, we'll work to actually make sure that this isn't just a piece of paper or a sign up but it's actually supported. Next question I've got is, what do you think about the new Police and Criminal Evidence Act? My answer to that is not really. I think it's got some good stuff in it on victims, victim support, some really good stuff, but it's mixed in with this stuff about people being able to demonstrate and express their opinions. Because I think all the liberties we've got now aren't because people actually just wrote in a few letters, but people were prepared to speak out and get change. And if we actually create a society where we can't speak out and actually get change, then our society will go stale. If we had this, then where would we ever got with tackling racial discrimination and people are demonstrating? Where would we have ever got on LGBTQ rights if people hadn't been able to demonstrate? Where would we've got on a whole range of things that people say I am not happy, and I actually want to be able to speak out. And do you know what? This idea that inconveniences people, because they want to hear it. Well, when you're demonstrating, you want to be heard. You don't want to go to some back corner field where no one can actually see you. We don't want this. We want to minimise disruption. We want demonstrations run properly, but it's a main act. And most of the demonstrations we're seeing is in London and places, but it's going to be applied all across the country to stop anyone even picketing outside the town, the council office when they're doing something you don't like. I just do not like it. I don't think it's very British. It goes against all of our liberties that we spent the last, I was going to say 1,000 years, but in the last 200 years plus actually building up actually. So it's a retrograde step, and it's a classic piece of conservative legislation, and I think people should oppose it. But we need to take out those bad bits and still get those good bits to go through. Last question, Philip. People feel safe and walk in the streets. What are you going to do about it? 78% of people in Hertfordshire have said that they feel unsafe on the streets. It's not a very good figure. Predominantly, a lot of women feel unsafe, particularly after dark. I talked about antisocial behaviour and gangs standing around. But here's one of your issues, right? And this goes back actually to Margaret's question on antisocial behaviour about, worried about reporting stuff to the police. I want the police to know already what's actually going on our streets. We need to move away from this fact that we just have to respond and record crime. We want them to detect. I want them to know what's happening on our streets, and we can do that in partnership with the public and everything, But they should know what's actually going on our streets, so we don't have to report it. They can intercept crime before it's happened. Know where there's gangs of kids going on. And as for walking our streets, immediately the thing that springs to mind is actually keeping those street lights on after 1 a.m. Because people do go out in the nighttime economy, and walking home in the pitch black isn't really good for them. And I'm probably unqualified to say it, but I think all these new LED street lights, they seem to light the road very well, but actually the pavements, it's not very good. It's not very good at all. I don't know if I haven't got the powers to change those, but also when we've got the police on a Saturday night and in places focused on disorder in the town centre, making sure no one's causing any trouble. But do you know what? I think we should as much be focusing on safe streets, safe routes home for people to walk home through their estates and everything to get home and actually feel safe to doing that. So why can't we put police cars in there to do that? Operationally, I don't decide any of that. I said, but what is decided is the priorities for the police. And I'm saying we want safe streets, and actually making people feel safe on the streets has to be a real a good start to it. But it's a KPI, isn't it? A key performance indicator on how well the police are doing is how well safe people feel on our streets. Coming up to 10 minutes. I'm going to leave it there. I thank you for listening, and I look forward to doing future ones of these. And this is my very first one, so I hope it's not too rambly. Thank you very much. I'm Philip Ross, Police and Crime Commissioner candidate, Labour and Co-operative Party. We need to be safe at home, safe on the streets, and safe online. Thank you very much.